Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Fringe Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Lorimer, today joined by Marius Ruitt. Well, it's a somewhat unusual topic for us on the Daily Fringe Show as our first story today, but one that is quite dramatic, I must say, at least in terms of rhetoric, and that is the escalating tensions between South Africa and Rwanda. This comes in the aftermath of 13 South African soldiers being killed in the space of just 1 week. As part of their mission in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo to fight the M23 rebels, which have been trying to take over that part of the DRC. Rwanda on Wednesday accused South Africa of siding with genocidal forces, according to news reporting from News 24, saying that South Africa was not a peacekeeper, it was not part of a peacekeeping operation, but was a co-belligerent. The Minister of Foreign Affairs for Rwanda said, "Let me be clear, the Southern African mission in DRC is not a peacekeeping force. It has always been belligerent in mandate. The role of the SANDF in DRC has never been clearer: to side with and protect the DRC President Tshisekedi, his genocidal allies, the FDLR, and many local militias, and his European mercenaries," said the Rwandans. In an exchange on X, formerly known as Twitter, Cyril Ramaphosa said that following the recent intensifications of fighting in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, South Africa has lost 13 brave soldiers. The fighting is the result of the escalation by rebel group M23 and Rwanda Defense Force militia engaging the armed forces of the DRC and attacking peacekeepers from the SADC mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He went on to say that South Africa is providing support to all the families of the deceased, that it was wrong to criticize the armies as being not prepared. He said, "We are concerned about speculation about the state of our troops and battle conditions. All South Africans must rally behind our brave men and women who have dedicated their lives to bringing peace in our continent." He went on to say South Africa's military presence in Eastern DRC is not a declaration of war against any country or state. The members of the SANDF are in DRC as part of United Nations efforts to bring peace and protect thousands of lives that are threatened by the conflict. President of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, responded to this on X, saying that, quote, "I held 2 conversations this week with President Ramaphosa on the situation in Eastern DRC, including earlier today. What has been said about these conversations in the media by South African officials and President Ramaphosa himself contains a lot of distortion, deliberate attacks, and even lies. If words can change so much from a conversation to a public statement, it says a lot about how these very important issues are being managed." He brought up a number of points and ended by saying, "If South Africa wants to contribute to peaceful solutions, that is well and good, but South Africa is in no position to take on the role of a peacemaker or mediator. And if South Africa prefers confrontation, Rwanda will deal with the matter in that context any day." There were also comments by Angie Mothleka, the defense minister, who said that Ramaphosa had put Kagame on notice, saying, quote, "If you're going to fire, we will take that as a declaration of war, and we have to defend our people." Morris, are we headed for a war with Rwanda?
I don't think it'll get to that stage. I think also in post-World War II especially, countries don't really declare wars on each other. Even if it's an open war, there's no real declaration of war. As far as I know, there's been no formal declaration of war between Ukraine and Russia, for example. So I don't think we'll get to where it's a formal war, but these things could escalate quite quickly. And it's happened in the DRC before. There have been 2 big wars in DRC since 1990. A lot of people talk about them as Africa's world wars because they were such... there were just so many countries were involved and so many people were displaced and so on. And yeah, we could maybe see something like this happen again. In those two previous conflicts, South Africa wasn't involved militarily, although we did diplomatically we were very heavily involved and looking for peace and so on. But now it looks like we could be involved militarily, and it's all pretty scary. You got to wonder if our military's up to being involved in somewhere like the DRC, especially up against an army like Rwanda's, who seems to be at the moment much more battle hardened than our troops, and also have access to a lot better equipment and so on. But also just looking at what Paul Kagame said, I don't think we should take something like Paul Kagame at their word. He's a tyrant and he's a thug, And for all President Ramaphosa's faults, he's very far from being the type of person that Paul Kagame is. I think Ramaphosa is much more committed to, for all Anti's faults, I think Ramaphosa is still more committed to things like democracy and the rule of law than Paul Kagame is. In the last election in Rwanda, Paul Kagame, he won about 95% of the vote or something. Maybe you can believe that's fair and fair. I'm not too sure about that. And one of the reasons that there are tensions between Rwanda and South Africa have existed for quite a while. And one of the reasons is because Rwandan agents, they come into South Africa often and kill members of the Rwandan expat community. And that's not just in South Africa, that's all over the world. But we've had tensions between Rwanda and South Africa for a long time because Rwanda doesn't actually respect other countries' sovereignty, as we can see right now what it's doing in Eastern DRC. So yeah, it's hopefully a diplomatic solution can be reached here. But I think Rwanda is it's a toxic player in the region, and the sooner Paul Kagame moves on, I think the better for not just Rwanda and the DRC, but the whole region, including as far south as ASEAN South Africa.
Yeah, that you were slightly off on those election results, Morris. Apparently, it was a 98% turnout, where Kagame received 99.18% of the vote.
It's a very popular man, obviously.
Yeah, clearly.
But, they also, if anybody's interested, as we were saying before the show, there's a very good book to read about Rwanda. It's called Do Not Disturb by British journalist Mick Lerong. And it's came out about 3 or 4 years ago, so it's not too dated yet, but it's about what's happens to the Rwandan regime. And a lot of people talk about Rwanda as this, shining beacon for development and stuff in Africa and how well it's doing. Apparently it fudges all its numbers, it cooks the books. It's not nearly as rich as it claims to be, and it's pretty much a Potemkin village. I've never been to Rwanda, but I believe Kigali is a very clean, pleasant city. But if you drive 20 k's outside the city, it's poorer than Limpopo. You can go to the poorest place in Limpopo, and it'll still be more developed than 90% of Rwanda. So, yeah, he's definitely somebody who's been very good at massaging his image and making people in the West and other developing countries think he's maybe not such a bad guy. And we've seen, he's like they're also doing things that Saudi Arabia likes to do, the sports washing. The Rwandan Tourist Authority, I'm not sure what team it is, but they sponsor, or they used to sponsor, one of the English Premier League teams. So yeah, they're very good at massaging their image, but I think you need to look below the surface. I don't think Rwanda is in any way a force for good in Africa.
As for South Africa's role in this, we've been committed to ensuring stability in the Eastern DRC since helping to negotiate peace agreements that ended the Second Congo War in around 2002. And I think that if we just sort of leave our troops there, we don't get them the air support they need. We've seen from the defense reviews, the state that our armed forces are in. I'm not sure if the situation has changed, but the last I read is that South African troops in the area did not have sufficient air support, which is a big concern because it's one of the big advantages we have over the M23 rebel group there. That if we don't properly support our forces there, South Africa will firstly, and most importantly, very likely lose more soldiers, which is something that should be avoided. But furthermore, we're going to lose prestige and credibility on the continent and our ability to stabilize and show that we're a force that can enact its will on the continent. Right now, I think DRC it's been a very unstable country for a very long time, and the last time the government of the DRC was overthrown was actually by a rebellion launched from this part of the DRC, supported by Rwanda. So it could happen again. And if DRC turns into another major war zone, this could suck in neighboring countries. It could involve China, the United States, Russia. There are so many negative externalities that could come down the line here. So I think it's very important that Ramaphosa takes this seriously and actually brings South Africa's efforts to bear on this. Swaggering around and simply declaring that we are strong and that we're in charge of everything without actually bringing proper diplomatic and military skill to bear here, I think is a very dangerous road for South Africa. And Ramaphosa should be building a coalition of other countries around the world now to put pressure, I think, on Kigali to step back rather than, sort of brushing this off almost as not that big a deal, which is the impression I've gotten up till now of Ramaphosa's response.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Okay.
say that also South Africa has actually been involved in the Congo for basically 30 years now. Nelson Mandela helped negotiate the truce between Lawrence Kabila and Mobutu Sese Seko when things first really started getting unstable there in Congo when it was still Zaire. So we've actually been involved there for quite a long time now. And also, this is I think this is the first real foreign policy test the South African president has had in the say last 20 years. You know, we've actually
Yeah.
seen foreign leaders standing up to our president, and you know, for as I've said before, for all Ramaphosa's faults, I think South Africa's are the ones, and South Africa's the one in the right here. And I think the president needs support, and as you say, we need to build a proper anti-Kigali coalition amongst countries in Africa and around the world.
No, exactly right. And the last time we failed to deal with a foreign policy crisis was in Zimbabwe, where we helped perpetuate the rule of ZANU-PF. And we can see the consequences of that to this day. Zimbabwe is a country in ruins that can barely trade with us, and millions of Zimbabweans had to seek shelter in South Africa, which has only caused tensions and problems here in this country. So let's try and avoid this again. The DRC has a population of 110 million people, and it's filled with natural resources. One wonders what role those are playing in this conflict as well on both sides. But anyway, let's move on to our next story. And this is something I think we've talked a little bit about before, but we've finally got some sort of official confirmation here, at least from one of the parties involved. There's been a lot of speculation that SpaceX was not able to spread its internet satellite service Starlink to South Africa because of BEE services, because of BEE requirements, rather. This was claimed by the DA and prior to getting into government. And now there's been a report, a submission given to the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, written by SpaceX, a 16-page submission, which says that one of the major barriers to them entering the South African market is BEE rules. Now, the Minister of Digital Communications is Solly Malatsi, who is from the DA, and he has proposed softening the line on the BEE regulations. Currently, in order to become licensed in South Africa, you have to be 30% owned by historically disadvantaged groups. However, Minister Malatsi has suggested that an alternative could be that if you simply provide significant opportunities, upliftment, and investment to local disadvantaged communities, that could count towards your BEE score regardless of ownership. And that Minister Malatsi has said that this is a practice that has been followed in other South African industries, essentially a way to get around BEE regulations. Minister Malatsi says that, or at least his department says that new rules on equity equivalence system, which is how they describe the changes, will be put forward by mid-2025. So we'll be very interested to see what happens there. That could be a very positive move forward for our country. What do you make of this story, Morris?
Yeah, I think that could be the kind of the thin end of the wedge, which starts dislodging BEE. It sounds very similar to the Institute of Race Relations' economic empowerment for the disadvantaged proposal, which is something similar. And it's quite telling that the government wants Starlink to give up 30% of its shareholding, whatever it is. If Starlink comes to South Africa, it will change the lives of way more South Africans than giving 30% of Starlink or 40, whatever it will come down to some connected BEE cronies. You know, if they have to give away 30%, then we'll get whatever. Let's say, for argument's sake, 100 people get really rich overnight. But if we let Starlink come and operate here, we'll get people be able to use internet across the country. It'll help rural schools. It'll be able to help small businesses, through payment methods and, being able to communicate with other people. It's just,
It'll help revitalize small towns, I think, in some places, because people who remote work will be able to more easily live in those places and still have internet access.
Exactly. So, there's so many benefits from having Starlink come into South Africa compared to having BEE. But we all know that BEE isn't about helping ordinary South Africans. We know it's about helping a small connected group of cadres. But I think if this can work and we can have something different, then it might be, as I say, the first kind of the chips in the edifice of BEE. And I think also what's important to point out here is that Solly Malatsi is obviously a DA minister. We've got to ask if the DA wasn't in the GNU and if we had, and all the ministers were still ANC or whatever, would we have these kind of proposals coming through about Starlink? I'm not sure it is. So, a lot of people have been criticizing the DA and the GNU, and some of that criticism is fair, I think, but some of it's unfair. And I think this is one of the places where the DA can really make a difference. And I think we should be pleased that a party like the DA is in the GNU and at least able to influence policy in some ways.
Right. So that's actually a question about whether we'll see these regulations changed, which is, will the GNU survive to mid-2025? I think this is an important question. And I think it's good that you bring that up. The stakes of this stuff couldn't be higher. But anyway, that's all the time we have for today. We don't have time to talk about Eskom's price hike. They want to increase electricity prices by just under 13% from the 1st of April. So that's not great, but we'll have to cover that maybe tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you tomorrow on The Daily Friend Show. Cheers, everyone. The Daily Friend Show and The Daily Friend are a project of the Institute of Race Relations, the IRR. The IRR is a think tank which was founded in 1929 to study race relations in South Africa and works to change government policy to improve race relations through non-racialism and to ensure the prosperity of all South Africans. If you like our work and would like to support us, please go to irr.org.za and click Support the IRR. Or you can go to thedailyfriend.co.za and click the Fund Us button.